conversation around responsibility and wealth is really very much at the forefront of the discussions that I have with my clients every day of the week. I think talking about responsibility and wealth is nothing new. We've been doing that for decades. It's just that is always measured against an eternally shifting backdrop. But the conversations around responsibility, essentially looking at the discussions I have, probably are centered around four main areas. I see amongst those areas the responsibility vis-a-vis the next generation, which is something the wealthy take very seriously today. I think that is very different to the sort of probably the traditional approach of making sure your family are well provided for. It's actually more about stewardship today, about mentoring, about instilling shared family vision, and really about making sure the next generation are earning that place in that wealth. I think one of the things that keeps our clients awake at night is the fear that the next generation will be unfulfilled, will lack purpose, will lack motivation. So that's one big area of the debate around responsibility. I think the second is around the responsibility about how the wealthy create their wealth and invest it. We're all very familiar with corporate social responsibility on the agenda, environmental responsibility, and really about wealthy families looking at the wider impact of how they generate their wealth and how they invest it. Again, the rise in the interest in social impact investing today. I think the third big area is responsibility towards society and the role of philanthropy in wealthy families. Whilst traditional donations still play a very large part in what families do, I think we're seeing families taking that responsibility to a much more institutionalized level today and looking at their wealth, at their philanthropic activities in the way they do their business activities. Much more strategic focus, much more accountability in how they do charity, and really the rise again of that sort of almost venture philanthropy, if they were looking at themselves as strategic partners in their sort of philanthropic activities. And I think last but not least in that, I suppose, responsibility debate is a responsibility in shaping families' tax and wealth structuring agenda in today's world. And I think that is something that we've seen again with big business, but I think tax and really tax governance is really at the core of what wealthy families are looking at today. Because whether we like it or not, I think they're assessed against a sort of barometer of morality today, of what is right, wrong, what is fair, unfair. But families have to shape their own, a bit like big business does today, but shaping their own internal tax policies in light of what is going on around them.
Well, clients they've always been philanthropic. The majority of the clients are, but they treat it in different ways. So some of them see it in terms of social duty. So how can they demonstrate their social duty, i.e. where they made their money locally, can they do something back, whether that's buying a football club so that they can provide their local community with access to a team that they've grown to love and know, whether it's social entrepreneurship, and social enterprise. And again, clients are much more forensic through the philanthropy piece in terms of what companies or what investment strategies they're employing to generate the wealth or generate the return in order to be philanthropic. But in reality, philanthropy for them is just another governance structure in terms of the wealth succession piece. And going back to Salpy's point, involving the next generation, how do you educate the next generation about the purpose of the wealth? And getting the children involved and getting them to understand the value of money if they haven't been involved in some of the businesses that have created that money first off. But charitable giving and philanthropy is a very personal thing, so some clients like to be very private about it, and therefore, again, it goes back to using structures in order to try and maintain that level of privacy. And other clients like to say, well, this is a way I am going to articulate and be known for the way that I treat my wealth with responsibility.
I mean, Siobhan, do you see a change of emphasis or a sort of greater nervousness around this?
I do. I think the media scrutiny of wealthy families, particularly families that have got a public profile already, they are judged in everything that they do. And I think that includes their philanthropic giving or the way that they live their lives, and whether they do nothing by way of philanthropy, they are judged by it. And I think there is a huge social pressure that everyone has a view about what they should and shouldn't be doing with their money. So whereas being privately rich and wealthy, I think, was probably easier in the past, that's not really an option.
But is that, I mean, just going back to Salpy's point, that is tax becoming part of that conversation? Because I just wonder whether you know, again, just as we've had this kind of odd situation where the Googles and the other companies are almost finding it's a kind of voluntary thing that you've decided you've got your sort of social tax that you're paying, which isn't necessary, is more than you might have otherwise paid. You know, is that coming into conversations about the social positioning, or do people still see it in terms of philanthropy?
People see it in a wider sense. I think families are increasingly concerned about their reputations and about how they're perceived by people, particularly if they have public profile. So it's a natural part of that discussion, but not the only part. I think it's a broader conversation. Generally, the tax is secondary to ensuring that the money is handed over to fit, you know, beneficiaries of the next generation who know how to handle and deal with the pressures that come with trying to interact with professionals or indeed take decisions for themselves and for their own children. So it's a broader issue than that. I think tax is very much a secondary issue often.